A little while back, a colleague stopped me in the hall and said, Paul McLeod, you look fantastic. And outside, I was just playing it cool and said, thanks. But on the inside, I was crying out, could you say that again? Slower? A couple of hundred more times? I mean, we replay our compliments, don't we? In your mind, don't you replay your compliments over and over? Why is that? Because we all struggle with this thing called self-esteem. You know, as we go through life, every day we see people around us. We see good-looking, pretty, handsome, attractive, well-adjusted, talented, satisfied, happy Canadians, right? Well, if the truth were known, many of those people are hard to hide something. Many, in fact, are carefully trying to conceal deep feelings of inadequacy, gnawing feelings of inability, painful feelings of worthlessness, embarrassing feelings of ugliness, and agonizing feelings of inferiority. And underneath the smiling exteriors are feelings of self-doubt and in some cases even self-hatred. You wouldn't think that, would you? You wouldn't think that other people are feeling those feelings. You pretty much thought that you're the only one. But you're not. All of us, to some degree or another, fight the battle of self-esteem. When we talk about someone's self-esteem, we're talking about how someone feels about himself or herself, that honest, late-night, painstaking look in the mirror, where we say, who am I, really? And what am I worth? And then the biggie, do I matter to anyone? You know, we all have at least a ballpark appraisal of our own self-worth. It was just yesterday, I was on the phone with a family, and they were sharing with me how one of their family members recently tried to take their own life and commit suicide. And the first thing I said to them was, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. And in the conversation along the way, I said, you need to know, you're not alone. The do I really matter question is so important. It has a direct impact on every area of our lives. It affects our outlook, it affects our relationships, it affects the way we spend our money and our leisure time, it affects our potential. I mean, we fear failing. So often we don't even bother trying out. We take all that we are, the gifts, the abilities, the talents, the ideas, the skills, the creativity that God has put into us, and we just say, like, they're not good enough. It adversely affects every area of our lives. And you know, one of the reasons we suffer from a poor self-esteem has to do with the wounds that are inflicted on us by other people. I don't know how many of you have ever been to an amusement park, but visited an amusement park where they've had, one of those house of mirrors. I was in one, many years ago as a kid. And you walk through the hallways and you see the most incredible distortions of yourself. You go up and you look in one mirror and you look like this telephone pole, like this string bean. Your fingers look about 12 inches long and like you've got this eternal neck. And then you go and you look at yourself in the next mirror and you look like this human bowling ball. And in a very real sense, the significant people in our lives, especially in the early formative and developmental years of our lives, the significant people are the mirrors we looked into. And some of you looked into the eyes of your parents and your friends and maybe your teachers, and you saw reflected back to you clear pictures of undistorted looks of love and of pleasure and of warmth and of acceptance and of pride in you and trust in you and approval of you. And if you were given that, you were given a gift that money can't buy. And you need to thank God for that today. You need to thank God. But on the other hand, if someone searches the eyes of significant others and they see a disapproving reflection, a stern look, a look of disgust, like you just never do anything right, or sometimes they see no reflection at all, eventually they come to the conclusion that they don't matter much, and they live with that. And understand, I'm not trying to blame anyone here. I'm not suggesting for a moment that anyone's parents or friends intentionally wounded you. I believe they did the best they could, so I'm not fixing blame. I want to say to any of you who have seen distorted reflections in the eyes of other people throughout your life, I want to say to you, I am so sorry. I'm sorry if I or if others could just wave like a magical wand when you and erase the pain you felt and still feel when you clearly remember those inaccurate reflections. We would. I'm sorry for the times that you felt unloved, the times you felt disapproval, unwanted, devalued, ignored. You came to the only conclusion you could come to, and I understand that. But you need to know your conclusion was based on distorted reflections of reality. The truth is you do matter. You are lovable. You are acceptable. You are wanted. You are treasured. You are loved. The mirrors you saw only gave you inaccurate reflections. So I invite you today to look into new mirrors, to look into new eyes, because if you do, over time, a miracle can happen. And this is the beauty of Christianity. We're talking about you and I daily looking into the eyes of God, who says to you, no matter what you think of yourself, no matter how low you esteem yourself, you matter. You're custom designed. There's nothing in all my universe, God says, that is more precious to me than you. I treasure you. Today is Good Friday. And one of the verses we're reflecting on is that for God so loved the world that he gave his very best. He gave his son. 2,000 years ago in history, the central figure of the human race willingly gave his life on a cross. I love what Timothy Keller writes. He says this, he says, the good news is that you are so lost and flawed, so sinful, that Jesus had to die for you. But you were also so loved and valued that Jesus was glad to die for you. This should both humble and lift the believer up at the same time. He says it fills us with more love and affirmation than we could ever imagine. So I'm going to ask you today to put a stake in the ground and to make a commitment today to stop looking into the eyes and the mirrors that give you inaccurate reflections of your own self, and to begin looking into the eyes of God to find there, for the first time maybe, how much you matter. I don't care who you are, how shady your past is, what your parents thought about you, what maybe your teachers think about you, how much you think you lack talent, how unattractive you think you are, how many times you failed. You mean something to the most important personality in the universe. And all of us know that if you mean something to someone important, you matter. You mean something to God. To God. And all of us have a yearning to matter. When you realize what you mean to God, and you live out of that, that changes everything.